Okay, we're going to get started. I want to thank you all for coming today. I know it's Good Friday and we all want to get out of here, but I really do appreciate you, the press, coming to our conference this morning. We're at a point in the session, the budget, the tax bill, fee bill, all that stuff passed last night without our support. We came here 2 years ago to talk about reining in spending, reducing taxes and fees, dealing with education costs and property taxes, health care, trying to fix Vermont Health Connect, doing something about health insurance, making it more affordable for Vermonters, and economic development. And what we want to do is give you a little snapshot of where we believe we are at this point in the session. And we were told last year in a budget that we were going to bend this curve in spending, that this was the year, that the intent was in the language last year to do that. And there was. I give the majority credit. They didn't include any one-time money, maybe because there wasn't any left to spend, but they did not include any one-time money, and I do give them credit for that. But I don't see anything about an expectation that all budgets and new programs would contain a multi-year cost analysis. That was part of the intent last year. We have programs in the budget that we don't know this information and it was supposed to be done. There were things to be set up in last year's budget to examine privatization of at least 2 agencies to see if we could save money by having a private sector do some services the state is currently doing. We were supposed to build a budget around 100% of the revenue. This budget didn't meet that standard. That's why there was a $47.5 million tax increase. Talk about reserves. There is no money left to build reserves, and that's one of our priorities, to make sure that if there is a recession, or maybe even this year, a potential rescission, there's no money left to help us in that area. And we want to make sure that that is focused. Our caucus has demonstrated its commitment to the above intent by introducing a number of bills. I have a list here that I'm happy to share with all of you. These are bills that have been introduced throughout this biennium. We want to promote economic development and a sound fiscal future. We are here to help and show Vermonters that there is another side to the story. With that, I want to turn it over to Paul Dame to talk about one of the suggestions that we had made last year in the budget, and I'm happy to report was included in an amendment last night. So Paul, can you talk about that?
Thanks. So one of the things that was unanimously adopted yesterday was looking into the issue of whether we can take this population of dual eligibles, folks who are eligible for Medicaid and for Medicare, and buy a Medicare supplement policy. We're already using global commitment money to buy to pay their Medicare premiums, and just to try to get a look at if adding this insurance policy is going to help save us money. I know I actually sell these in my private business outside this, and it helps a lot of my clients. I don't know why we haven't looked at this before. Now, this was something that was brought up last year's budget, and it was intended to be included, and just in the final flurry, it got left out. We added it as an amendment last year, and it didn't make it through conference committee. So Representative Fagan and I sponsored a bill. We sent it to healthcare. They took some very introductory testimony on it. They included language in their appropriations memo to look into this. I talked to a couple members of Appropriations Committee late in the process to see if it was still in there. We looked through the final budget, it wasn't there, so we brought it up as an amendment again. And I'm just, I have to wonder how serious it's being taken, and if we're going to be through this process again next year. Now, hopefully, we can get the House Appropriations team to fight for it in the conference committee, because it's the kind of thing with the budget we have, we're using accounting gimmicks to balance our budget, trying to pull next quarter's month's revenue into this month, and I'm really concerned that we're going to come back with a big budget adjustment. So I'm trying to get this report presented in time to act on it for budget adjustment. It's hard to figure out exactly how much this is going to cost, because the numbers I've been able to save. because the numbers we've been able to get from JFO haven't been as granulated as we need to, and we need to get a little more cooperation from DEVA to find out how much that we'll be able to save using this.
Thank you, Paul. The other area that we focused on in the last week, and we've been focused on since we came here back last year, is the healthcare fiasco called Vermont Health Connect. And I want to have Doug Gage and then Cynthia talk about our efforts there to try to get the majority to take serious action on this particular issue. Doug?
Yes. Thank you. Yesterday on the budget, we presented an amendment that would have restored funding for an independent, extensive review of Vermont Health Connects. Vermont Health Connects has caused thousands of Vermonters much grief and suffering, as we all know. The stories seem endless and they seem real. Without a review, we could well be throwing money down the tubes as we've done in the past. We must act now. We must fix Vermont Health Connects. We must stop the suffering of Vermonters. It has gone on far too long. The fix is long overdue, and we cannot wait another day. We had votes along party lines yesterday on the amendment. With few exceptions, Republicans supported Vermonters on this amendment and with their votes. I'm asking for a call of action to people to call their legislators and get busy on putting this back where it should be as a number one on the priority list, not ahead of some new initiatives like is happening now. Thank you.
So for those that weren't there last night, Doug's amendment was to have the Green Mountain Care Board oversee this assessment, which is consistent with what's being talked about. However, the Healthcare Committee had passed language that was put in the budget but not funded, that requested JFO hire someone to do this assessment. We then funded that amendment. A substitute amendment was funded in the proposed budget by using money that the study for Dr. Dinosaur 2 would have used, and taking some money, $500,000, out of the appropriation of $14.8 million for Vermont Health Connect, and we could use that money later in this fiscal year and then do a budget adjustment to restore it if we decided to continue funding Vermont Health Connect. So this was not an open-ended or a non-funded amendment. It was the exact same language that both the Healthcare Committee and the Appropriations Committee passed, but did not fund.
And it was in the top 4 priorities of our committee. The total amount on doing it was a little over $500,000. I was told by Appropriations that it was $612,000, and the remainder part of that money would have come out of money from Vermont Health Connect's operating budget of, I think they said $14.5 million. Yeah. So basically we need just over $500,000. And the problem with going on with Vermont Health Connects is we could be throwing good money after bad if we choose the wrong course.
And using money out of their operating budget, which is for the entire 12 months up front, we have the ability to restore it in a budget adjustment. We were not creating a hole. I question the majority's commitment to this amendment if they wouldn't pass it last night. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Cynthia.
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. Just before I go to the Vermont Health Connect, I want to say that while a lot of progress has been made in terms of trying to get the budget under control, there's been no progress in substantial tax reform or really substantial budget reform of the entitlement system. And we are in, what is it, like the 6th year or 7th year of an expansion, even though it's been slow. The chances that we're going to have a recession rise every month. Sooner or later, every expansion ends in a recession, and tax revenues shrink during a recession. So what are we going to do if we can barely balance the budget during the expansion? I'm very worried about the future of this budget and of the services we need to provide Vermont. Pardon?
The budget gap while you're on that topic. For next year is $30 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's $30 million already, and then if tax revenues, general fund tax revenues fell like they fell in the last recession, they're going to fall $30 million or thereabouts. So now it's a $60 million gap. And then if the need of Vermonters for services rises by $30 million, now you have a $90 million gap. We are not balancing this budget sustainably across the business cycle. It's reckless. It's not doing what is best for Vermonters. And while there's a lot of progress has been made, without substantial budget and tax reform, we are going to be in real trouble in the next recession, and the federal government is unlikely to be able to bail us out the way they did last time.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to say briefly that one of the problems with the amendment that Representative Gage offered last night was the majority was saying, well, we're trying to figure out how to fund this, and you can't take that money to fund it. We need that money. Well, as it happens, last week we were informed that a particular information technology project would not need $1.9 million in general fund allocation that was given it in 2011, okay? So general fund dollars from 2011, not needed. So that money is not in the budget, it's not allocated in the budget, and right now there is a plan that that money will be allocated by the appropriations to 2 other uses. The uses are valid and worthwhile, but I consider funding the study to figure out how to go forward with Vermont Health Connect or replace it to be much more urgent than those other uses. In fact, I can't think of anything more urgent.
Vermonters can't think of anything.
Vermonters can't think of anything more urgent, and I would call on the legislative majority to do a freestanding bill right now allocating $500,000 of that money. Whatever problems there are in terms of how much it's going to cost and who's going to control it, sit down and figure them out right now. Do a freestanding bill, pass it, get it to the governor's desk. I call on the governor to support this. Why would we wait until May to figure out all the details about this and finally get it in place? Let's get it in place now. Vermonters deserve no less. The money is sitting there. They found it under the couch cushions. It's sitting there, and it's going to be put to other uses. So the majority cannot say they do not have the money for this. They do. They're just choosing not to fund this important priority to serve Vermonters.
Thank you, Cynthia. And then our last priority is economic development. We could fix some of our financial problems if we could get the economy to grow. And we haven't really looked at that. We haven't focused on it. I don't believe the majority's focused on that at all. And we have some ideas that we've put forth. I'm going to have Representative Parent talk about some of that.
Thank you. In 2009, when the Speaker and then Senate Pro Tem Shumlin decided to override the FY2010 budget veto of Governor Douglas, they made a bet that they could spend Vermont out of recession and spend their way out of our fiscal issues, and we have seen them stick to this failed theory budget after budget after budget. There are 2 ways to fix this budget problem: reduce the rate of spending growth in Montpelier, and accelerate economic and income growth. I serve on the Commerce and Economic Development Committee here in the House, and we passed a bill a few weeks ago, H867, a bill that would provide clarity around workers' compensation and unemployment insurance, clarity that will help us develop a 21st century workforce and grow our economy. Yet we are seeing it get held up for a few weeks now. There are other bills in economic development that we can't get off the wall. This year's economic development bill passed out of that committee is more of a technical correction bill. I'm as frustrated as my constituents are, not only about the tax increases and the spending increases of the last 2 years. I'm frustrated about the last year we had a little bit of, sorry about that. Last year we had some focus on economic development. This year we haven't. We haven't talked about growing the economy. Cynthia's right. A recession's just around the corner. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. What are we going to do as a state to keep my generation here? What are we going to do as a state to keep my friends here? What are we going to do to keep our families here when they retire? Because Vermont's becoming a place they can't afford, they can't find good employment, and we need to change that. And these budgets make it harder and harder each and every year. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. Thanks.
And if we don't have young people like that, we won't have jackets like that. Sorry. It's better than all the old-time blue guys.
As long as we got grandfathers, we'll have jackets.
Yeah, there you go. So in wrapping up, the House caucus, Republican caucus, remains committed to fixing this crisis and recommends that we move forward in a united manner. We have proposed solutions. They're on the walls. Many of these members are on bills that have brought these things forward. I believe that based on the current revenue projections, as I mentioned earlier in this, that we are likely to have a rescission in this current budget. And then a significant budget adjustment in 2017. Vermont has a structural budget problem that cannot be resolved by simply levying large amounts of new taxes every year. We've seen it. We've seen it year after year after year. Vermonters have seen it. They can't afford it. They keep telling us. Hopefully, we can get the attention of the majority in the next 6 weeks. So we believe to preserve a much brighter future for Vermont, we must work together. Work with the majority. Hopefully, they'll take up our ideas. And we have to start bending this curve on spending. Thank you for coming today. We'll be happy to take some questions, and I have a press release for everybody.
Tom, what would be an acceptable rate of growth in the general fund budget? What's the number?
The rate of growth can only match the rate of revenue.
What's the number?
The number is about 2.2%.
Instead of 2.7?
It's 4. The general fund is growing at 4 this year, 4.5 over the last 5 years.
What would you cut?
What would I cut? I'm glad you asked. We have a number of suggestions, just like the governor has, and I brought those forward to the committee. We would focus, well, first we do what the law already says we're supposed to do. We'd start looking at this privatization. There's supposed to be a committee already in place reviewing these services. They're supposed to identify 2 state agencies, go through them, put out an RFP to see if a private sector enterprise could do it for less money than state. There's one. We would not allow the treasurer to use it to spend any more money or lend out any more of the cash flow. We would require the Secretary of Administration. The state of Vermont issues $570 million in grants annually. Some of that is federal money, much of it is general fund state money. So we would ask that the Secretary of Administration reduce state-funded grants to achieve up to $7 million in state savings. Every agency would rank in order of importance the agency mission, outcomes, and community need, prioritize all grants, and notify the bottom 20% that the grants are in jeopardy until we have enough money. We may still fund those grants if the revenues support it. If they didn't, they'd be put on notice. There's a page in Paul Dane, what, 300 pages? How many pages?
There's 1,260 grants on the list from AHS.
And these grants range from $1,000 to the city of Portland, Maine for smoking cessation. Then nobody can tell us what that's for. That's the kind of stuff we're looking at. And there's more. And the governor made some proposals that should have been looked at that are ignored. I'm not saying that they would be adopted, but there are proposals out there. So, I could go on. I got a list here. Any other questions?
Well, last night, Mr. Johnson said on the floor that your proposals have pushed spending from the general fund into other funds.
I made some recommendations, and I'll tell you what they are right now. In my local budget in the fire department, the cost of buying, this is an example, and this is what I was saying to Mitzi in the committee. We used to buy air packs for firefighters. We'd buy air packs every year in our operating budget. Since then, the cost has gone up so much that, and they last for 5 to 10 years, so that's a capital definition of a capital improvement expense. So I said to her, why can't we look in state government that things that we've been buying in the general fund year after year, why don't we start looking at buying some of those in a capital fund? Large trucks, maybe for BGS. Things like that have big expense that have grown. Cars 10 years ago cost X. Today they're double the cost. Can we continue to afford to buy them in the general fund? Maybe we have to start spreading it out over time. That's the kind of recommendation we made. And I used that same example in the Appropriates Committee.
How does looking at privatizing these 2 agencies save you in money in 2017?
That's a suggestion. I'm not sure. They were supposed to do it this year. We'd know that, Terry, if they followed the law last year. The other thing that we wanted was no new or expanding of programs. Job growth in the state government. We have a bill, H425, that would require that by 2020 that we reduce the state workforce by 10%. And we would do that through natural attrition. No layoffs, no early retirements. We just have a systematic plan to address what's going on in state government job growth year after year after year. All right, thank you very much.